to give WeTransfer as a company some props, like we've always been allowed to create art that does kind of provoke a reaction and does sort of, speak to things happening in our times and is braver. And if some people don't like it, whatever.
So, Holly, welcome to Director's Notes.
Thank you for having me.
No, this was just such good timing because there's been loads in the news about you guys at the moment, which I want to talk about. But before we dig in, please just introduce yourself and your role at WePresent.
Okay, hello, my name is Holly Fraser. I am the editor-in-chief of WePresent, which is WeTransfer's arts platform. We work with artists from all over the world, so far over 1,000 different artists from about 130 different countries. And we collaborate with them on one-off projects and commissions ranging from photography series to events and exhibitions to publications and short films, which is why I'm speaking to you today.
Absolutely. So yeah, it's you guys. There's so much that you do, and when I was researching it, there was so much to cover. But I was really pleased that we had the film side focus. And there's a film that was sort of I want to dig into and be a case study. But you guys have been everywhere at the moment because of the new Wild Bird short.
Yeah, I forgot to actually send you the news post of that.
That's
That was
fine.
one I did
I've
last
been
week.
getting. I think because I've been doing all my research, I've been getting it everywhere, so I know all about it.
Oh, great. No, it's very exciting. And I think it's a really kind of nice testament to how we work with artists. So we've known Russell for quite a long time. He was our guest curator, which is an annual series we do where one artist sort of takes over the entire platform and does a number of different projects over the course of about a year.
Mm.
This year it's Riz Ahmed, who we also have a long-running relationship with, but we first worked with Russell in 2023 and worked on a short documentary with him, which was about searching for sort of his icon, David Robiliard, who tragically died of AIDS in 1986, and through that sort of shining light on incredible artists that had passed away due to the AIDS crisis. And Russell's a fantastic collaborator. He's one of my favorite people to work with. And the producer on Life is Excellent, the documentary, Susie, who we're also working with a Wild Bird, approached us about, when was it? Probably last October, November. So we had a chat with Russell and Susie, and Russell said, look, I'm writing this short film. I'd love to work with you guys. Told us about it, and we were like, yes, we're in. Yes, please.
Yeah.
Really great team. It's a small team. It's Russell, Susie, myself, and our senior producer Alex from WeTransfer coming together to make the short. Andrew Haig got on board, which was fantastic news. I also found it quite funny in all of the press and social comments. People were like, give that casting director a raise. Like, that was Russell and Susie. There's no casting director.
They knew.
They knew. So no, it's very exciting, and we shoot in 3 weeks. So yeah, very, very excited to see the outcome. It's an incredible team of people, and yeah, we're really excited. But it's a nice way to sort of continue the trajectory of how we actually collaborate with artists. It becomes nothing ever feels sort of transactional. It becomes almost, like a friendship, which is a lovely way to work. I'm very
Yeah.
lucky.
Yeah, I think that's so important. This is sort of living more in an AI driven or perhaps, less personal world with what we do. That's why I love those stories that come from the heart and have got those productions at the heart of them. And
No, I
yeah,
totally agree.
and that
I'm a sort of, anything AI, and I turn my nose up and go, I mean, I know it's the future, but I'm like, no, no, thank you. No, thank you. Not for me.
it is some part of some future.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it'll be around me, but yeah, no, there's much more exciting things. And yeah, just the cast on that. I mean, Olivia Colman is iconic.
Mhm.
I don't know what you'd say otherwise. And
No.
Andrew Haig, I just think he's incredible. I'm so excited
Yeah.
to see
No.
sort of what more he brings. And yeah, this is just a brilliant story. And it's a very British story as well.
It is, yeah. I think, I won't say too much about the film or the script because I want it to be a surprise for
Of
people,
course.
but it's not going to be what you think is what I'll say.
Okay. Okay.
Which is really exciting. So it's Russell has written the script. It's the first short film he's written, so it's obviously very personal to him as well. It's very, very beautiful. It's like it says it's about this sort of road trip of redemption, and then Andrew is obviously bringing his very specific director's lens to that, and that's all I'll say for now. But we do have some incredible people. Sandy Powell is is doing the costume design. She's a friend of Russell's, and I mean, it was all kind of mad and serendipitous. Susie, the producer, rang us to say, and she was like, "Oh, Sandy's able to take some time away from the new Martin Scorsese film she's doing to do the costumes for
As
this."
you are.
Exactly. I mean, we were like, wow, that's incredible. And
Yeah.
we knew Sandy through Amru, who we did another short film with. So no, it's all felt like a kind of very serendipitous moment, and also nice because I think a lot of people don't know that WePresent and WeTransfer have been commissioning short films for about 8 years now. It's been quite a long time, and we've been very kind of behind the scenes, and we don't want to none of the films have like over product placement or anything like that. So it is more about creating artist driven work.
Yeah.
But it's nice as well, obviously, when we're a small team doing this kind of work, that finally people are like, oh yeah, they kind of do some cool stuff sometimes, which has
Yeah.
been very validating with this as well.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying with the brand placement and those kind of things, we're in a beautiful era where there are films being made by people that people have no idea for, like Amelia Perez with the fashion
Yeah.
house behind
Yeah.
them.
Mhm.
I think there's so many cool people doing great creative things that people have no idea because they think, oh, funding might be a bit boring and corporate. I'm like, no, look at the amazing people you can get involved.
Yeah, it's true. I think it's been really interesting and actually really nice to see more brands approach, a few years ago, this was branded entertainment and it was basically a glorified ad. And people are like, oh, we're making a film. It's like, no, you're not. You're making an ad with a celebrity in it. That's it.
Yeah.
Whereas I think now there has obviously been more understanding that audiences don't want ads. They want actual entertainment. They want something that has an emotional connection, that means something to them, which is something we've always, we've fought for it. But, in our sort of small little way at WePresent, there's been many fights over the years with CFOs and whatnot being like, what's the value of this? But it is nice to see other people now doing the same. Like you said, YSL, obviously with Amelia Perez
Yeah.
and the other short films they do. Who did I see? A Gap have recently hired a chief entertainment officer, as they want to move into entertainment. Even randomly, I think Starbucks now have a film production studio. So,
Oh God, I don't know how into that I am.
I mean, I'm not sure. I think it's all. I did read the press release, and it was coffee driven narratives, which I was like, okay, you do you. But also like WhatsApp, for example, makes some pretty great short films that they
Yeah.
don't out about, but they're really, really good.
Yeah, we've featured some of
And
those on director's notes.
yeah, they've been really good, and I think that's what one of the whenever people say like, oh, what are some of the hopes you guys have at WeTransfer and WePresent with all the creative work you do, and one of the things, which sounds a bit worthy, but like it is true, we all come from artistic backgrounds ourselves. None of us come from like tech or marketing.
Yeah.
If artists are able to get their work made and are able to be paid properly for doing that, and that's coming from a brand who's going to appreciate their artistic integrity and vision, great. Like more, that means more work can get made. So I am really happy to see other brands sort of step into the space and do it with integrity. I think that's the key
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Let the artists make what they want to make and not get in their way. So yeah, the more the better, I think, in that sense.
I agree. And this sort of talking about this branded side of things is where I wanted to get into today, because I want to focus on your commissioning, what
Mhm.
you do on that side of it. And I've got Original Sin that I sort of want to speak about as an example, because we both featured that on the sites. But yeah, because I know sort of you've been saying, and upon research, there's a lot of misconception that you
Yeah.
guys are just sponsors and you're not actually commissioning the work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been interesting. And we're a small team. There's 7 of us that WePresent that work across all aspects, not just film. It's sort of myself and one producer who work on film specifically.
Wow.
Which is it's busy, but it's
Yeah.
fine.
Like looking at your films and everything you make, I was like, that's a lot.
Oh no, it's great though. I mean, we're very, very lucky to do it. But yeah, so WePresent, I mean, a little bit of back history, I suppose. So WePresent started as a platform that was more so kind of highlighting artist stories, and WeTransfer is a product that's used pretty much in every country around the world. So the idea
Yeah.
was to celebrate creativity everywhere, feature artists, tell their stories. And after a year or so, that sort of transformed into more original commissions. And when I took over the platform from the founding editor in 2019, my background's in journalism and documentary making. So it was more of the sort of world I was in anyway. So we started doing more original commissioning. We were very lucky to work with Riz Ahmed and Anil Karia and commissioned The Long Goodbye quite
Mm.
early on in 2020, which ended up doing incredibly well and sort of getting a
Yeah,
bit more attention. So then people were kind of looking at us being like, oh, okay, you guys are doing some interesting things. And what we do, we commission about 4 or 5 short films a year. It's not a huge amount, and that sits alongside the photography events and exhibition work that we do as well. But it's really about, looking for interesting stories, looking for brave stories, stories that are sometimes a bit provocative. We don't want to create work or work with artists that are too, I don't know, like safe, media trained, not on the right side of history. We're very much like, if we're lucky enough to be able to commission 4 or 5 short films, and there's only so much of a market and a world for short films anyway.
yeah,
We want to create work that's going to stand out, and we want to give artists and directors the space to be able to express what they want to express. So we're very we run the commissioning ourselves. We get hundreds of pitches, and I think the key thing for WePresent across all of our genres is curation. So we have a fantastic team who are very, very good at curating work. And for us, it is, it's trying to kind of build a slate that feels like it all speaks to each other, that feels like it fits, that feels like it has, narrative and sort of bravery and some, sort of provocative nature to it where necessary. And yeah, that's what we've been, I guess, quietly doing for the last 8 years. And in the last few years, it's got more attention, and people are starting to understand, I guess, a bit more what we do. And again, when an artist works with us, they'll sort of turn around afterwards and be like, that was weird. Like, you guys didn't force me to put a product in, or give me hundreds and hundreds of notes. Like, is everything okay? But that's the point. I think, we don't want to force our vision on anyone. When
yeah,
I think, when any brand collaborates with an artist, you have to respect them, you have to respect their vision. That's why you're working with them. So you have to let them do what they want to do and what they're going to do, and the work will always be better for it.
yeah.
That's what we sort of stand by at WePresent. And yeah, so far it's working out quite well for us, we think, at least.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. But because you've really early success, like you mentioned with Riz Ahmed and The Long Goodbye,
Yeah.
which is a phenomenal short. We've got that on director's notes as well. And, I was going through and I was watching, all the films on there. And like you said, there's such a journey.
Mhm.
And I recognized so many of them from festivals, or I recognized writers that you had on the pieces. That's your curation, and that's something I want to dig in later. I
Yeah.
love the people you match up with for writing the interviews on the films, as
Mhm.
someone who sits on the film journalism side but also sits on the festival curation side. it's
Yeah.
it's brilliant.
Oh, well, no, thank
um
you so much. And I think that's, we've always been very intentional at WePresent. And like I said, I think a lot of that comes from myself and the team. All 7 of us come from creative backgrounds, whether that's journalism, working with artists in museum curating, music management. So everyone's sort of in that world in some way anyway. And I think, we've all been in rooms where, whether it's brands or, magazines or newspapers or whatever, have been, pretty performative. And it's all about optics, and it's about, what's this going to say about us, not about who's actually making the work. Are they able to dig into the nuances and complexities of a story? So with every journalist we commission, we make sure that that they understand their subject matter.
yeah,
For us, it's very important when we work with teams that the story being told is understood by the cast, the crew, the director, the DOP, like the press team, the social team, everyone. Which I think, it should be second nature to people, but it's not, unfortunately.
I agree.
So we try to sort of, make sure we shout about that as much as possible as well.
Yeah. And it just makes for such better reading. Obviously, I'm someone who's chronically reading interviews and press releases, and you know how it is. Because
Mhm.
even if they're films we've covered, I want to read about what other people are saying about them, and from different points of view.
Yeah.
And recently there was an interview that was featured both, so it premiered with you guys at WePresent, Far from the Plains, and then it featured with us.
Mhm.
And I loved sort of, because I'd written the interview and I loved reading yours first and seeing the sort of different take and the different editorial style. And that's what we need. I think
Yeah.
there's quite a lot of people who do the same thing, rinse and repeat,
Yeah.
which is fine. But as I said, when you're reading a lot of them, you're like, oh God, not the same quotes.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's, it's something that unfortunately is happening across, that's probably a whole different topic, but across
Yeah.
journalism, it's that as it becomes such a squeezed industry, as there becomes less money, less jobs, people using AI in newsrooms, all this type of thing, it loses the human touch, it loses the
Yeah.
nuance, it loses the complexity of stories. And, I'm a sort of very puritanical about all these things, but I think that that's the sort of essence of humanity. And if we lose that, I mean, we're sort of sliding down the slope to doom in many ways. But you know, we need to retain our understanding of each other. We need to retain empathy and compassion. And I think that artwork, film, creativity, and being able to express that is one of the key ways that we're able to connect as people. So, squeezing that into something that's created by a computer in 20 seconds feels like it's of being human.
Yeah. Completely agree. Really, yeah. That's my hot take, 100%.
Yeah, me too.
So let's dig into a little bit on Original Sin,
Mhm.
which was a film that I caught as part of London Film Festival. So I think it was last year. And
Yeah.
then we were thrilled to see it come into director's notes. But this is one commissioned by you. I've had so many great conversations with Amru as well. So I'd love for you to sort of dig into a little bit how that started so filmmakers can get an idea of what the process looks like with you guys.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this was a one that again felt very sort of, I guess, intrinsic to how we work. So I was aware of Amru. Well, I actually commissioned Amru in my previous job when I was journalist, and they were working more as as Glamru, the drag on the drag
Yeah,
side. I commit, and Glamru is obviously a fantastic. Amru is obviously a fantastic writer as well. So Amru wrote a few pieces for the magazine I worked at. And then I was aware that they were sort of moving into filmmaking, had, seen a lot of the short films, and obviously saw Layla, which is a fantastic debut
love
feature.
Layla. Yeah.
Great film. And it was actually then Russell Tovey who said to Amru, "Oh, you should speak to the team at WePresent. They do some commissioning." So Amru and I met up, we went for a coffee, sort of like, oh, we'd not spoken for like 7 or 8 years or something. As you know, it's a small world. Everyone sort of knows someone that knows someone, don't they?
It's tiny.
And so small. And Amru, we were just talking about, I explained the process of how we work. And Amru was talking about the type of films that they want to make. And um, basically sort of said, oh, I've always wanted to explore, my relationship with my mother on screen. And it's very nuanced and complex. And, what I found so interesting about it when Amru was explaining it is that obviously it's, there's trauma there from homophobia, but also in the context of Original Sin, it's also very linked to Islam. And I didn't realize, and Amru was explaining to me, that in Islam, if the child goes to hell, so does the mother. And that sort of became the kind of crux of the film and the exploration. And I thought it was, obviously a really sort of fascinating way of looking at different cultures, different approaches to drag, and obviously Amru's, very personal connection to it as well. And one of the things we always try to do with our commissioning is ask directors, as much as obviously they're comfortable with, to dig into something that feels personal to them,
Yeah.
that they have perhaps a lived experience in, because I think it always creates the best work, and it always sort of creates this work that can't be told by anyone other than that person. And it just so happens that, we've done that quite a lot, and those are the films that have always been the most successful, just because there's such a depth of emotion to it.
Yeah.
And I think that was the same with Original Sin. And so Amru, we had this great conversation, and I said, look, go away and, write up a script and a pitch and send it over to us, but I would love to work with you, and I would love to explore this subject more. So they did. Like a few weeks later, I got the script and the pitch, loved it. It was great, knew it would be. And we greenlit the film and we started going into production on it. And we again wanted Amru to be able to explore it. You've seen the film, and
Yeah.
it's incredible, but it's quite dark and there's a lot of depth,
There's a
and
lot.
there's a lot going on, and
Mm.
and it's provocative and it's brave, and it's like, it's not the type of film you see all the time, but that was what was really exciting to us, and I think to obviously to Amru as well.
Yeah.
um, and for us, that sort of, really sums up the type of commissioning that we want to do. It's about allowing filmmakers to be themselves and to create something that hopefully has not really been seen before. And so, yeah, that was, that's sort of the best way, I guess, a process can work. It always starts with a conversation with the filmmaker when there's not even necessarily a script or a pitch deck. It's more like, "Oh, I've got this idea. I don't know about it, but what do you think? talk it out, and then by the end we're both sort of really jazzed up and be like, this is gonna be amazing. It's how we work quite often with Anil Karia as well, who we've just done the short film Vote Gavin Lyle with, which started in a
Yeah.
similar way. And I think it's always the best, you know, we work, as much as possible, we start working with directors on their films from essentially the inception stage. It's quite rare that someone will send me a finished script, deck, everything, and be like, I'm ready to go, off we go. We always try to, you know, be involved in the discussion points as much as necessary. I mean, obviously some directors are complete geniuses, and, you know, like Amrit and Anil, and they know exactly what they want to do and they go off and make it.
Yeah.
But we often, you know, have the discussions early, because as much as it's obviously about the film, it's also about the world that the film's being released into. So we talk about the campaigning, and we talk about, are there ways that an audience is going to relate to this better than others? How is it going to be seen? Is this a festival film? Is this a community film? What does that press and social launch look like? Which, you know, you have to do these days as well. So it's kind of thinking about the film and the world building that you can do around it, which is, you know, really exciting. And yeah, that's kind of how it goes.
Yeah. But I think that's why I wanted to speak about this as an example as well, because it does, and as somebody who's watched sort of all of your films and everything going on there, it speaks to the heart of what you're doing. And I know sort of Amru, like they were saying it's a protest film.
Yeah.
And there's a quote that I've written down, because they were wanting to critique white liberals. So I'd love to sort of know, because you giving these artists the freedom is what we need, and people can sense that, and people are intelligent.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about the film and how it's going to sit in a larger scale and that sort of promotion and everything, what do you have to take into account when it's a film that, you know, might put some people's backs on edges?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of started, I suppose, with The Long Goodbye. Like, you know, that was a film that was about, it was made in 2019, and it was Riz and Anil's sort of personal feelings about hate crime rising, particularly in Muslim communities post-Brexit.
Yeah.
So essentially it was about, you know, Britain being racist, and that's not the type of thing that you would always see from a brand commissioner.
Yeah.
Um,
Especially not then.
No, exactly. And I think people, you know, sometimes some people saw it and were like, oh, it's a bit risky. Oh, it's a bit violent. Someone gets shot. There's, you know, these things happening. But I think for us, that was sort of the pivotal moment where, like, no, this is the type of commissioner we want to be. These are the type of stories we want to tell. They're important. And, you know, I was sort of like, well, if I get fired for this, at least it's a really, really great piece of work that exists in the world. But it, you know, thankfully the company agreed that it was necessary and important.
And it went right the other way.
Well, exactly. I mean, once there was an Oscar involved, people shut up a bit.
Yeah, you're like, there we go.
I know, but no, I mean, you know, back to your question, I think that, you know, we're like I said, we're a small team. It's very obvious where our politics lies from the type of work that we do, and, you know, we're all very much of the opinion of, like, while we can create work and while we're in a privileged position to be able to commission filmmakers looking at the stage of the world that we're in, we want to make work that feels, you know, as much as we can from our small little place, important and necessary, and can perhaps change conversations or change people's points of view. And I think we all, you know, whatever side of the political spectrum you sit on, we're all guilty in our own way of being in our own echo chambers. And I think that, you know, film and art in general is a great way to sort of change your perception. And if you know, not necessarily change your perception from one swing to the other, but at least make you look at things differently or try and empathize with people in a different way. So, you know, with Amru saying this is a film critiquing white liberals, it is, because, you know, people love to say, oh yes, I'm, you know, on this side and I support everything. It's like, but do you actually? And, like, how much of an ally are you actually? And is this going to make you uncomfortable? And we found that a little bit. And, you know, Amru, I'm sure we'll talk about this, when the film was going through the festival run, people were privately texting going, oh my God, this is amazing. It's the best thing I've ever seen, but we can't show it. And it's like, well, you know, you're kind of completely standing on the point that Amru's made about the film then. And it's like, you know, if this work is incredible and it's amazing, which we agree it is, it should be seen. So for us, that's part of the conversation as well. It's like, you know, this work could be seen as risky or provocative. Some people won't get it. Some people, you know, Original Sin, I think in parts is very funny. Like, a lot of people don't see that because they're scared to talk about it. And I understand it. Like, no one wants to say the wrong thing and be called out or cancelled. But I think art great art should start conversation and should provoke reaction and emotion. Original Sin does that, and I think
Yes.
that's, you know, that's when we get excited about filmmaking and directors and scripts, is when we see something that can really kind of poke under the skin of what people think, and you know, start these interesting conversations and debates, because that's, I think, when, you know, you're making interesting
Yeah.
work.
Absolutely. You want people to be talking about you. You know, I'm sure there's lots of old sayings, but whether it's good or bad, they're still talking about you.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And I
And
think,
obviously, hopefully, that's going to draw people in more. But no, I was, I was speaking to Amru because they were saying how brilliant it is, landed on director's notes and talking about
yeah,
the festival struggle, because I sit as a festival programmer as well. And sadly, I wasn't surprised because I've had those kind of conversations
yeah,
before, and it is so
yeah,
frustrating. So then
yeah,
it's essentially, and then sometimes it does become this thing. And I'm like, so the festivals are just kind of playing the same blocks of films which appeal to the same people. And so
yeah.
then from that end, it's just, yeah, it just tightens that noose so quickly around work and where it can go.
Yeah, no, I think so. And one of the things that you know, Amaru and I were talking about a lot with Original Sin, which I thought was such an interesting point, and another reason that I really wanted to commission it and make it, is that in, you know, in film with minority filmmakers, we're often peddled the same narratives which feel acceptable to people not within those minorities, because they can sort of give themselves a pat on the back and go, we've told this story, it's good for us.
Yeah.
Whereas with the Original Sin, Amber was like, no, I want my characters to be monsters. I want to show that, you know, Arab people can have the exact same emotional responses as everyone else, and they can be horrible, and that's fine, because
Yeah.
we're all people.
Yeah.
Which I think is such a great way of looking at, you know, Original Sin and film generally. Like, if we want to create stories that are equal but also diverse and representative, people need to be able to express the exact same emotions and be given that space to do so, which I think Original Sin did brilliantly.
Yeah. Completely. Yeah, absolutely. And so going into the production sides of things as a commissioner, Original Sin was a big one. I mean, shot, 35 millimeter with some of it. The production design was incredible, building all those sets. So what does support look like from you guys for those, those really challenging things, the behind the scenes production?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So, well, how it works is usually we'll start working with the director. The director will usually have their preferred production company or producer that they want to bring on, which is fine. We've worked with, you know, everyone across the board.
Yeah.
We have a discussion with them, the less fun money conversation. But you know, we really try to give the film what it needs. So with Original Sin, we didn't originally have budget for, you know, shooting it on 35 mil. But after speaking with Amru, you know, they made such a case for how cinema is almost another character in this movie, and like giving it this sort of very sumptuous 35 mil feel really added to the narrative and to the characters, and we completely agreed. So, you know, we did some creative accounting. Yes, we moved
Always
some,
very important.
I know, moved some money around from a different project to be able to free up some space. So we try to do that as much as possible. I mean, you know, with support for us, obviously, like, you know, no sugarcoating it, money is a big thing. Like, we're
Of course.
lucky that, you know, we don't have millions and millions of pounds, but we have budgets to be able to support these short films, you know, fully. So we covered the production budget for it. With Amru, they already kind of had a, you know, a really great team in place, but with other directors or more first-time directors we've worked with that don't, we're happy to help them, you know, with casting or with setting them up with a production designer. We always hire a BT, behind the scenes photographer, that's going to kind of understand the nuance of the film to shoot the pictures that they can
Yeah.
then use. We have in the past designed the movie posters for some of the films if the director doesn't have like a preferred person they work with. So we're kind of there as we, you know, we've got musicians to do the score. So we're there as much as possible, depending on what someone needs. With like an Amru or an Anil, they're, you know, incredibly experienced. They sort of have their preferred people. So it's more just like, you know, having conversations about how it's going to look, making sure that the budgets are covered, getting, you know, the photography and whatnot from on set. But with some of the younger directors that do need a bit more handholding because it's their first film or something
Yeah.
like that, we're a lot more involved in each stage of it. So it kind of depends on what the artist needs. We try to be there as much as possible, but we're involved in every stage of the conversations, and you know, always on hand to be like, yeah, we'll look into licensing that. You know, another film the other day that came out, we were like, oh, the song hasn't been licensed. Let's quickly get in touch with the people we know at the record label and turn that around quite quickly. We work on the campaign. So with Vote Gavin Lyle that recently came out, I don't know if you saw, we did
Yes, I have.
we did like a mock billboard campaign around London,
It's amazing.
which was great. And that was our producer Alex, making sure that the posters were aligned with the ASA guidelines, which was all a bit dodgy. So we're tweaking things to make sure that everything works. So we get involved wherever the director and the team needs us to, and are very happy to be involved in all parts of the production in that sense.
Yeah. And the freedom that I know that gives directors, working with independent, from like 1-2 teams up to larger independents. It doesn't matter the size of the scale. The director does sort of need that creative freedom. And they do need someone who's able to take control of other aspects for them. And I know, having spoken to so many directors, they can be control freaks as well. So they need to be able to trust who they're working with entirely.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. And it's why we've worked with a few people a handful of times, but we obviously try and vary it so that we can, have a varied slate and work with, lots of the first time directors and give them their breaks and things like that. But it is really nice working with people a few times as well, because you do build that trust, so that you're just sort of on, you give them a ring or you text them, and it's not like it's obviously official, but there's more trust, there's more of a relationship, there's more of a rapport. People just know you a bit better. Like, we've worked with production companies, some such, a lot in the past sort of 7 or so years. So we're all friends now as well, which is really nice, and it's a nice way of working. And the director knows that we're not trying to screw them over. We're not going to do something that is, going against the integrity of their film. And we know the same as well. We know that they're going to be creating something that they feel really proud of, and not just churning out like, oh, whatever, it's a brand that's going to pay for this. It's a brand film. So there's a mutual trust and a mutual benefit there, which, we're all aware of. And it's a nice way to work. And like I said, it's me and Alex, our producer, on the calls. It's not like 30 execs all with different feedback, which is an absolute nightmare for directors. So it's a more chilled out way of working, which is quite nice as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Right. I want to dig in to Vote Gavin Lyle.
Yes.
So this is Anil Karia's. As soon as I watched it, I pinged it out to everyone I know, and I was like, watch it, watch it, watch it, watch it, watch it. And then but some people are like, oh no, oh gosh, And as a huge fan of Slow Horses, so obviously knew his face, and then seeing him in this role, it's just fabulous. And you guys, this has come out at such an awful time. I mean, it's great time for the film in a really weird way. You know what I'm trying to say?
The whole, even speaking about the film is quite
right. I'm sort of
jarring.
struggling to get the right words over.
No, I agree.
But so I would love to know about sort of challenges with this, how you're approaching this, because this is a piece of work that you're putting everything behind, I think speaks to so much.
Yeah, no, and I think I agree with you. It's a weird one to talk about, because it's objectively a brilliant film.
Yeah.
But
it's funny.
It's so funny.
So
and
funny.
You feel there's so many beats on it that are hilarious, but also based in awfulness, because it's, the bedrock of the film is the fact that Britain is becoming an increasingly racist and fractured country with a massive far right, and that is not good for anybody. But I think the way that Anil has approached it is really genius. I mean, Anil, he's so humble, but he's a genius director and writer, and just so specific about everything. And that really came across, I think, in Vote Gavin Lyle, because it's not overt. It's all pretty subtle. The jokes are sort of subtle. The tone is subtle. He's not punching down to anyone, which he didn't want to do. It's sort of really showcasing the hypocrisy of the often men in charge of these parties, who are doing it for self-interest and power and don't care about the narrative that they're peddling or the community. And there's a line in Vote Gavin Lyle where Gavin says to his wife when they get into the car after the pub scene, oh, shut up, Amy, it's all about creating a narrative, don't you realize that? And it's kind of, that speaks to the heart of the issue. And it's, so many people are being hoodwinked by people like this because of fear, because of not understanding the systemic issues through governments and structures and white supremacy that's keeping these things in place. So kind of getting all of that into a 15-minute film that's also funny, that's also watchable, that people are like, oh my God, I need this as a series, is an incredible feat. And I think Anil said it well. He was like, Jack was worryingly good in this role,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
he is. Um,
But that's
again,
testament to him as an actor.
yeah, I mean, exactly. He's absolutely incredible, and he was so good.
Yeah.
Um, but I think for us again, it's like I was saying earlier. There's you know, we want to be brave with the work we do. And for however long we're able to do this, if this film had gone belly up for us and I'd been fired, I'd be like, well, at least it was off the back of something that I believe in.
Yeah.
So, and actually the response to it has been incredible because people do understand it. And, obviously there's been some, if you look on the YouTube comments, some people are absolutely outraged.
I was about to say I have a big love for looking at YouTube comments, and
It's fine.
I knew these ones would be brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, there's some people that one of my favorite ones was like, I don't know, something about WeTransfer. I don't know why they're choosing to die on this hill of creating propaganda films for the Liberal government. Why we'll never use that for sharing service again. I was like, fine, good riddance, like
Yeah,
whatever.
I don't want you.
No, off you go to Dropbox. We don't
Yeah.
care. So and I think that's the thing that's also, to give WeTransfer as a company some props. Like we've always been allowed to create art that does kind of provoke a reaction and does sort of, speak to things happening in our times and is braver. And if some people don't like it, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think, Vote Gavin Lyle is, again, we chose to, speaking with Anil and Scott at Some Such, we chose to not go down the festival route to start because the local elections were happening. So
Okay, I was going to ask why that decision.
yeah, we chose to release it right before the local elections because we wanted to provoke a bit of a reaction. We wanted people to see it. I mean, none of us were under any illusions that it was going to change results or anything, but it just felt like the right time for this conversation to happen.
Yeah.
And again, I think a lot of people, watched the film and loved it. Also, some people watched it and were kind of scared because they're like, oh yeah, should I say this is funny or whatnot? Which is,
Yeah.
some of similar responses that something like perhaps Original Sin had. But it's about filmmaking that in our little small pocket of what we're able to do, hopefully is going to stand the test of time, is, working with fantastic directors who have a real vision and also aren't afraid. I think, so many people now, sadly, and I get it, and sometimes are afraid to speak up or afraid to stand
Yeah.
up for what they believe in. And, in certain industries, you lose your job for protesting or standing up for what you believe in. And, as much as there's integrity in standing up, a lot of people, you can't do that. They have families, they have things that they have to support. And again, we sort of have these conversations as a team, like with our budget annually, how can we use that in the best way that's going to create great work, is going to hopefully start conversations, but is also going to like back what we believe in. And that's really important to us as a team. Everyone, we have a lot of conversations about work that, again, we're not under any illusions that we're changing the world, but in our own small way sort of matters.
Yeah.
And that's really what a lot of it comes down to. And that's, again, supporting directors and being brave. And, with something like Vote Gavin Lyle going, yeah, whatever you want to do with it, Neil, this is your vision. This is what you're saying. And we back you on this.
Yeah.
But it's, he's a total genius.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, definitely throwing this one out to the public was the right move.
Yeah,
And
and
that's
I mean, I think it will do festivals later in the year,
absolutely.
UK ones specifically, because it will just continue to get more attention. But it's the type of film that I think it's it had a sort of explosion when it started, and it'll be a slow burn. Like people are coming to it across YouTube, or it was featured in the
Yeah.
Guardian, places like that, throughout the next few months. And again, it was a conversation we had with Anil and the team when we were deciding to do festivals or release it publicly first. We were like, unfortunately, this isn't a narrative that's going to disappear in 6 months' time. This is only something that's going to become more potent. So the film will only kind of live on in that sense as well.
Yeah. But also I commend you, having the initiative also for putting it out online first, because I know all over there's so much fear with filmmakers when approaching festivals. They're like, oh, my film's online, it can't be in a festival. And while I'm sure, as you know, that's true for maybe the top 5 and for certain festivals as well, it's great for filmmakers to be able to see and to know that that's not the only way you have to go.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you know, for example, The Long Goodbye was online before, and it went on to win an Oscar.
Yeah.
And like you said, yeah, there's obviously, you know, the top tier ones need their world premiere.
Yeah.
Um, I think, you know, one of the things that we're lucky with, you know, WeTransfer's used by 80 million people a month. It's massive in like pretty much every country. And whenever anything goes live on our channel, it gets a huge amount of, we call those impressions wallpapers, like when you see the background thing and it's
Yeah.
just one story.
Yeah.
So it gets a huge amount of them as well. So it creates and generates traffic just by being on the site. But there's such a lack of distribution for short films generally. You know, festival, I think Sundance last year got, I don't know, like 12,000 entries for their short
Yeah.
film section, and a handful of them get picked, and then the rest just somewhat fall by the wayside. Some end up on YouTube, some end up on a show reel. But we want to support short filmmaking as an art as well, and not just as, you know, sometimes something will be a proof of concept and that's fine, but not just as a way to get to the feature.
Yeah.
Celebrating short filmmaking as an art form in itself, which I personally think creating a great short film is harder than making a great feature. And it's something Anil talked about with Vote Gavin. He wanted this to be a short. He wanted to
Yeah.
celebrate that art form. And so putting things out online, being able to give them space and traction via WeTransfer and, you know, our social platforms and that kind of thing is just a way for great work to be seen. And one of the other things we do when we don't commission films and aren't involved in the full process, we do still premiere short films as part of our
Yes.
monthly curation series, which is called WePresent Selects. That's when we haven't been involved in making the film, but, you know, a filmmaker will have done the festival circuit and go, I've got nowhere for this to live now. So we premiere it online, we, you know, interview them about the process, and then it goes out across WeTransfer as well. So it's a
Yeah.
way of getting the film seen,
Yeah.
because it's just not enough of that for shorts specifically. So yeah, in our own little way, we're glad that we can be, you know, helpful to filmmakers in that sense too.
Yeah, absolutely. It is so key because the amount of filmmakers who you know, just their films, they just die and they've just ended up somewhere and they haven't really got a home, and all the love, the money, the care, the blood, sweat and tears that was put into that is just kind of, the momentum's gone. And I think that's
Yeah.
such a shame.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I would love, you know, I've been in countless sort of, I'm sure you have as well, like industry sessions at film festivals being like, how are we going to solve distribution?
Oh,
And
yes.
it's, you know, and that's for distribution with features as well. Like no one
Yeah,
even
yeah, yeah.
the shorts, they just sort of end up by the wayside. So it's a huge, you know, it's a huge problem, but it's also a huge area for opportunity. I think if, you know, you can showcase the work of fantastic directors throughout their career stages, that's something that we, you know, we're happy to be able to do.
Yeah. And when you are working with filmmakers on a festival strategy, you know, as I know you're doing with Amru, how do you approach that?
So we work with, first of all, we sort of say to the director, you know, what's your dream scenario? Where do you want this to be? And, you
Yeah.
know, looking at the production timelines, what deadlines you've missed, et cetera, is all the practical things first. But we ask the directors to create a bit of a wish list, making sure that, you know, it takes into account what they want, festivals that are Academy qualifying, BAFTA qualifying, BIFTA qualifying, so that we can be in those conversations. We
Hmm.
do with a consultant, a guy called Brian Newman, who used to work with Tribeca Film Festival,
Okay.
you know, who's been a real asset. Just because we're such a small team and film isn't the only thing we do, it's useful
Yeah.
to work with a few other people at times. So Brian will step into those conversations with us, and we'll have a big meeting with the director, discuss where they want it to go, changes of rules and whatnot that have happened at festivals. Then we create a big old Excel list of all the festivals, all the dates. Has it been submitted?
Yeah.
Usually the production company does the submissions just because they have the director's bios and headshots and, you know, practical things like that.
Yeah.
And we cover the costs of submitting to the festivals. Then once we, you know, that, as you know, that can take months to sort of submit and hear back with everything. So we're very flexible about when the film goes live
Hmm.
based on does at a festival. We're also, which I think is interesting, you know, not everyone does. We don't own the rights to any of the films. That all sits and stays with the directors. So
Nice.
if during the festival run a streamer or a TV network or whatever wants to buy their film and host it, they can, as long as we then have a fight to retain our credits. But that's sort of the
Of course.
thing for us about this is not, we don't make money from this. It's about brand awareness and aligning with our audience.
Yeah.
So that can be a conversation that comes up during the film festival circuit. Again, there's not a huge market for shorts, so it's happened that often, but it's an option. And then once we have a bit of a trajectory of like, right, this is where it's going to screen, we'll work with the director on what does an activation look like, whether that's just something as simple as an industry dinner to celebrate the cast and the crew, whether that's, like a billboard campaign like we did with Vote Gavin Lyle, whether that's fun little pieces of merch, for example, that, relate to the film in some way, just sort of nice things that kind of can help the film to stand out in is a crowded marketplace.
Yeah.
And then after that, once we've done all that, it's a hope and a prayer that people like it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what you can do with festival journeys. But yeah, no, it's knowing as well the festivals that will respect your work and your auteurs' voices. Because I think a lot of people, that's a mistake that they can make. They just go, oh, these are the ones I know about, the big names. And I'm like, but if you
100%.
dig into their curation and you dig into what they represent, it's not actually your film. And I'm a big believer in there is a home for every film. It
No,
just
I
needs to find
completely
its
agree.
own way.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we have these conversations quite often, sometimes with the more first time directors, like, where do you want this to go? And they're like, Cannes. And you're like, well, okay.
Great.
That would be, we'll submit it.
Yeah.
But there's also all of these great smaller festivals that you maybe aren't as aware of, but their curation is really great, or it's the beginning of the journey of a film that ended up winning a BAFTA or something like that. Knowing the curation teams, knowing what they're looking for. So yeah, we have all those conversations with them as well. So sort of, hopefully broaden people's horizons a bit, because I think people think there's like 5 or 6 film festivals and there's hundreds.
Oh, I know. No, it's bonkers. And a lot of it always surprises me, oh, well, when filmmakers don't really know. And I'm like, okay, this is a big world.
Yeah, no, exactly. But I think it's great as well. And, there is so many specialized film festivals as well that we always look at with our films, like what makes sense, what's the storytelling, how is this going to fit, what kind of audience go there. And then it's always quite interesting after it's done a bit of a festival run looking at the letterbox reviews.
Yeah.
We did for Original Sin, and Original Sin's got some amazing letterbox reviews. I definitely guarantee
Oh,
have a
I
really
need to dig into those. I need to go move away from the YouTube ones.
Yeah, no, the letterbox ones are brilliant. Yeah, Amaru's shared some of them, but no, yeah, it's about again, it's curation. I think it comes so much down to curation, understanding audiences, taste levels, what's happening culturally, what's happening in society, and how your artwork fits in with that.
Yeah. And then I want to talk about the editorial side. So obviously going back to Original Sin, interview with Harry Pillion.
Yeah,
Harry
Harry
Lighton
Light.
from Pillion.
Yeah, I know.
Pillion.
I also called him Harry Pillion to start with. I was like, that's not his name.
Okay, great. Which I am obsessed with him. I'm obsessed with the film. Director's notes covered a short of his Wren Boys years ago. And when I read it was those two, I was like, this is amazing. So I'd love to know about that pairing and just, yeah, to discuss a bit more, your wider network and who you're able to pair filmmakers with, which I think is a huge standout feature of yours.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about curation and intention and commissioning with intention, whether that's an interview or whether that's a film. With the interview with Harry and Amaru specifically, they're friends, so that was obviously a big help. And we had a conversation with Amaru originally when we were, because obviously every part of the process was very intentional. So we said to Amaru, like, is there someone specific you want to interview about this? It needs to be someone that understands, how you approach things as a filmmaker, like who you are. And Amaru said specifically, he's like, oh, let me ask people, but I would love to speak to Harry, who's a friend. And I think what was really lovely about that conversation, aside from the fact you can tell they're friends and they both love each other's work, is the sort of understanding of what it takes to make a film from somebody that's also done it. So you get a bit more depth in terms of them talking about specifics within the creative process. And that works well for our audience that we present and we transfer, because of our subscriber base, the majority of them are filmmakers or people that work in film. So that's our kind of key. It's also why, a lot of this work makes sense. A huge amount of our audience are working in the creative industry, and of that amount in the creative industry, a huge amount of them are in film. So again, unearthing interesting and maybe nuanced and sort of almost nerdy aspects of the filmmaking process is what our audience like. So the fact that Amru and Harry could get into that was great and made for a different type of feature than if Amru was interviewed by, The Guardian or someone like that, and it would be more about the sort of societal aspects. So that's always something we look at. We have just again, as you know yourself, just by being in the industry a long time, knowing lots of people, filmmakers being like, oh yeah, I could speak to this person, or we'd be like, oh, what about this artist who I know also loves this subject matter? You guys should chat. So it's always a conversation. It's working with the directors, it's asking them first and foremost, is there anyone you really want to speak to about this that you feel is going to get it and understand you? And then if they don't have a suggestion, then we'll give them a list of suggestions that make sense, and they look at the writer's work and then sort of decide that way. But I think with everything, like I said a minute ago, it's sort of about curation. It's about how to get the best out of the story. It's about understanding the director's audience and our audience as well, and understanding what they're going to respond to,
Yeah.
and then building this kind of narrative based on that.
So we've spoken about sort of the editorial side of things. We've spoken about the commission side of things, but how do people find you? How do these filmmakers sort of reach out to you, or how do you access the work?
Yeah, I think it's kind of 50-50, and it started off a few years ago. I mean, still, I think a lot of people are semi-confused about WePresent. Once they get it, and they quite often love it.
Yeah.
But some people still like, oh yeah, it's that weird thing that WeTransfer does. So we probably, I mean, we need to do a better job at sort of saying this is exactly what we do, and being a bit more, we're all a bit humble, and so if someone pays us a compliment, it's like, oh, stop, it's that type. Probably should stop that. But
I think
but
you guys have. I think you've cemented your success now.
thank you. But no, it's pretty 50-50. So the more, at least within the industry, we got known, more people sort of started pitching to us and reaching out. Quite often it will be a referral. So, with Amru, that was the case, referred from Russell.
Yeah.
A lot of times an artist will say to their friend, another artist, oh, you should speak to these guys. I work with them. They were great. Send some ideas. So it comes that way. But then also we are always looking. So, that we do send out some like cold call emails occasionally to artists. We're like, we love your work. This is what we do. Would love to explain it a bit more, because sometimes it's obviously sounds a bit weird.
Yeah.
But if you're interested, if you've got any stories in the back of your brain you'd love to explore, we'd love to have a chat, things like that. We also go to a lot of film festivals, obviously watch all of the the shorts, watch everything, and sort of find directors that we think could be great to work with, make big lists of them. The whole team, we have monthly curation meetings as a team where
Nice.
everyone brings ideas, again, not just film, it's across the board, but we've had them since we started, and it's a really great way of sort of looking outside of yourself. So
Mm.
in the beginning we had quite strict rules, like you couldn't bring white men, you had to bring people from
Great. I love that.
different different countries around the world we hadn't featured before. But now we have featured, like, people from about 130 countries. It's a bit more broad, so it's like, bring people that are culturally interesting, that are doing
Yeah.
interesting things. So we have those once a month. We've got one later today. So that's the way that people bring interesting people, we all have a chat about it. And other times, sometimes we'll get an absolutely random but joyous email from someone that we're a mega fan of, being like, oh, I saw you guys on this thing and I'd love to have a chat. And we're like, oh my God, they know we exist. So
Wow.
it's sort of, really kind of all ends of the spectrum. But we're always looking. I think that we're constantly curious. We're never just behind a laptop 24/7,
Yeah.
which is nice, lucky. Sometimes we are, obviously, but being out, looking, meeting people all the time, loads of meeting, loads of chats. Like I said, we don't, in film specifically, we only have the budget to do about 4 or 5 shorts a year. So we get a lot more pitches than we're able to do. The worst part of the job is having a great film, being like, oh, we can't afford it. I'm really sorry, we can't do it.
Yeah.
We keep those relationships going. So we'll say to someone, if not this time, stay in touch. We'll
Yeah.
start commissioning again in this month, keep talking to us. So we've got a constant flow of conversations happening,
Mm.
which is really nice. There's so many amazing ideas floating around that it's very heartening as well to be part of that.
Yeah. And I mean, that's how filmmakers, some of the best filmmakers work. They have different projects at different levels, sort of going on at different
Yeah.
times, depending on where they get into, where they're looking for funding. And I think those are generally sort of the best, most interesting filmmakers.
Yeah.
And then that you're able to keep those relationships going. I think that's so essential.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that a key thing for us has always been building relationships, and WeTransfer as a brand, and then WePresent as the arts platform. We've never been again, I think it's because none of us come from marketing backgrounds. You know, there was a terrible time when we had to start learning all this marketing jargon, and I was like, I have no idea what any of these acronyms mean. Like, how do they relate to my work? But you know, we none of us come from those backgrounds, and so it has always been more being on a level, I guess, with the artists and creative we work with. So we have more in common that way, and we sort of naturally become friends with a lot of people that we work with, which is lovely. You know, there's a level of trust there that we're able to develop, and it happens over time as well. Like I said, we've been doing this for nearly a decade, quite quietly,
Yeah.
but in time we've been able to garner a lot of trust from people, which has been really nice. So it's yeah, it's a lucky way of working, but it's been a long time that we've been kind of
Yeah.
fostering it well.
Yeah. 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 There's a phrase that, so it's actually my husband who hates it more than anything when people say overnight success.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, sorry, find me an example of somebody
Yeah.
who's had overnight success. They have been grafting and working and putting in the hours, putting in the everything to build, develop. So with you guys, that is your curation, your reputation, who you represent. Yeah, there's no such thing as overnight success.
No, exactly. And I mean, you know, also the other thing is that it's also very easy to lose all of that sometimes. You know, that's why we're very careful about who we work with, and making sure
Yeah.
that we're doing our due diligence, and making sure that we are being really intentional with commissioning and who we pair together, because, you know, we want it to be work that, you know, we don't want to fall into any of these sort of performative brand traps that other people maybe do. So it's yeah, a lot of care is given, and that's, you know, the great thing about the team is everyone cares so much, and we're almost like a bit of a, you know, family of siblings at this stage. It's not a team of people that move around. Like, I've been here 7 years, you
Yeah.
know, our senior head of creative production's been here 9. Like, everyone's been in the team such a long time, because we love what we do, and we care about the artist, and we care about ourselves, and we care about creating good work.
Mm.
Which sounds, I mean, I know it sounds awful and worthy, but like, it's true. So it's a nice, you know, we're lucky that we've able to sort of come together and work like this. So, you know,
Yeah.
we definitely understand that.
Yeah. Yeah. And staying in this industry and being able to celebrate that longevity is also
Yeah.
huge. I mean, Directors Notes just turned 20. So I've been with them sort of 5, 6 years.
Mm.
But 20 years in any industry, especially
Yeah.
like hard cutthroat one where there's not a lot of money, is always something for celebration.
No, I completely agree. And I think, you know, there's so much to be said for legacy as well. And
Yeah.
again, to your point, or your husband's point, nothing comes quickly. And I think we, you know, exist in a state at the moment where people want things overnight, or people are saying that they're a creative director when they've been doing something for 6 months. And it's like, you know
Yeah.
what, you do you, and you say that, but like, these things take experience, and they take knowledge, and they take relationship building, and they take mistakes, and they take all of that learning that comes from years of experience that you don't get without putting the work in. But that is far more rewarding in the end. And I also think, from a brand perspective, which, you know, how we think about things that we transfer as well, it's about creating legacy. And, you know, so many people are like, oh, I own a brand now, and I started it last week. And you're like, you don't really, you've just like, you've got an idea. Again, a brand, I think, is something that's hard earned, and it's
Yeah.
about reputation and care and trust. And we want to, you know, hopefully as long as possible, until, I don't know, maybe we get fired for doing some strange political thing. But
I mean,
I
so far you've done very well.
know, I'm joking. I'm sure
I
it's
know.
fine.
So Wildbird is under production. I know you've got loads of other things going on, so I'm not going to ask you about that. But I am going to ask, hopefully for audiences and people watching, if you'd want them to take away one thing from the We Present commissioning film side of things, what is it?
Oh, good question. I think I would say for people to constantly stay curious, to constantly look outside of yourself for ideas, inspiration, people, thoughts that you might not otherwise know. And from specifically a We Present commissioning side of things, again, I suppose it ties in. Perhaps look for artwork in unexpected places. You know, I
Mm.
don't think anyone a few years ago would want to watch a short political film from a file sharing company. um, but I think, you
Yeah.
know, given the landscape we're in, given how fragmented and fractured the state of the world is, the state of the entertainment industry is, the state of art is, I think good work is coming from unexpected places. So yeah, keep your eyes out, stay curious, and keep looking for it. And
Yeah.
also stay inspired. You know, again,
Yes.
like we said earlier, I'm not a fan of conversation saying creativity is dead and we're all going to lose our
Oh,
jobs to robots. You know, it's creativity is the core tenet of being human, I think. And the more we can celebrate that, the better.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm going to completely butcher the name of this, but it's a documentary. Some guy who's like, oh, I just dug into AI and had an existential crisis, but then sort of comes out of it on the other side. And I was like, okay, we need to have our moments, yeah, where we all go, oh gosh, this is a bit scary. But actually, let's not focus on that. Let's focus on how we can mitigate those circumstances and how we can just carry on doing what we do, and the creativity and the curiosity. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
I think that's so
No, I
important.
totally agree.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. It's lovely speaking to you.
You too. This has been brilliant.
Yeah, no, I've
Um,
really enjoyed it. I was also looking at my lovely view of Marseille.
yeah, I mean, that does help.
Yeah.